My name is James. I'm 22, and my brother pushed me into the lake and laughed while I was drowning. He thought it was a joke. My parents watched, smiling. That was the moment I stopped being the quiet one. 2 weeks later, Marcus's $50,000 0-cent college fund was gone, and so was I. Before I tell you how I pulled it off and vanished, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels, farther than I ever did. The drive home from the reunion wasn't silent in the way peace is silent. It was the kind of silence that buzzed behind your ears that made your skin itch. I sat in the back seat, wrapped in a damp beach towel that smelled like mildew and barbecue smoke, my shirt clinging to me in wet patches, my lungs still wheezing faintly with every breath. The air conditioning was on full blast, and it made the towel feel like ice. Marcus was up front, humming along to the radio like nothing had happened. Now and then he chuckled under his breath, and each time it felt like a needle pricking at my spine. My parents, Robert and Susan, were talking about groceries. Milk, maybe chicken for the week, casual, as if I hadn't been in that lake, gasping for air while they watched, as if their youngest son wasn't inches away from needing an ambulance again. But I remembered. I remembered the water closing in above me like a door slamming shut. I remembered Marcus's laugh, sharp and cruel, and the way Dad barely glanced over while I fought to stay afloat. It wasn't the first time the cold had gotten to me, but this time, it didn't come from the lake. It came from them. That chill hit deeper than any fever or storm. It reached into old places I thought I'd sealed off years ago. Like the time I was 16 and brought home my first car. It wasn't pretty, some rust on the doors, a scratch down the passenger side, but it ran. I paid for it with after-school jobs, every saved dollar from tutoring and stocking shelves. A week later, Marcus took it without asking. He said he just needed it for one night. That night ended with the car wrapped around a telephone pole. I never even saw the wreck. Just got a call from Mom, her voice sweet as syrup. "He didn't mean to, James. He's already so upset. That college fund, your grandfather's savings, maybe you could use some of it for the repairs?" I did, and Marcus never said thank you. Or my 21st birthday. All I wanted was dinner. Just one dinner with the people who were supposed to love me. Instead, I spent it wiring Marcus $5,000 because he'd run out of money in Vegas and was too embarrassed to call Dad. When I hung up, Dad clapped me on the shoulder and said, "That's my boy, always responsible. Family helps family." No one asked what I wanted. No one noticed what I lost. That drive home from the lake, it felt like the funeral procession for the version of me they thought they knew. The quiet one, the reliable one, the one who'd always be there. That boy drowned in the water that day. The one who came out, he wasn't about to play that role anymore. My grandfather was never a man of many words. He didn't need them. He built things instead. Shelving units, chicken coops, cabins, and eventually a thriving construction business that paid for every Marin to go to college if they wanted. But the real gift he left behind wasn't the company. It was his silence, his quiet, watchful eyes that caught what no one else thought he noticed. He watched Marcus burn through every dime of his allowance while I pinched pennies to buy used textbooks. He saw Marcus charm his way out of speeding tickets while I spent my weekends tutoring freshmen to cover car insurance. And he saw how, no matter how many fires Marcus set, I was always the one who handed the extinguisher. A few months before he died, he asked me to meet him in the old workshop behind his house. The place always smelled of varnish and sawdust, like memory and effort baked into every plank. He sat at his old wooden workbench and slid a leather-bound ledger across the table. "Money," he said, in that dry sandpaper voice of his, "can be a hammer or a crutch, depends on who's holding it. You're a builder. You know how to hold things up." I thought he was being metaphorical. I didn't realize he was handing me a key. When he passed, the will confirmed what that moment had hinted at. He'd left me everything, not just some bonds or an account. He left me the bulk of the estate, the business shares, the investments, even a stretch of land near the river I'd never seen. Marcus got a token sum, my parents got the house, and a modest pension. The will was clear, and so was the message. He trusted me. They never forgave him for it. The ride home from the reunion, where Marcus had shoved me into the lake and laughed while I sputtered for breath, was the longest drive of my life. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was polished denial. My mother finally broke it. "James, honey, are you feeling better?" I didn't answer. I stared out the window, watching the trees blur by. My body was dry, but the ache had settled into something deeper. "Don't be such a baby," Marcus muttered. Marcus, my father, sighed, but it was the kind of sigh you give a puppy chewing a shoe. Not real scolding, just mild inconvenience. "But he's right," my dad added. "You've always been too sensitive." I climbed the stairs when we got home, not even bothering to unpack. The cold wasn't in my lungs anymore, it was in my chest. So I did the only thing that made sense. I called Michael. Michael wasn't blood, but he'd always felt closer than family. We met in kindergarten, shared peanut butter sandwiches, dreams, and later, therapy-level conversations under streetlights. When I told him what happened, he didn't yell, he didn't say, "I told you so." He just said, "I'm coming over." 15 minutes later, he was sitting on my bedroom floor with a bag of burgers and the kind of fury that only comes from watching your best friend get crushed again and again. "This isn't about the lake, James," he said. "This is about every single time they used you and called it love." I picked at my burger wrapper. I wasn't hungry. How many times have they asked for money? How many apologies has Marcus never given? Too many to count. Have they ever loved you without needing something in return? I wanted to answer, I did, but the silence between us said enough. My eyes blurred, I looked away. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. After he left, I pulled out an old photo album. There we were at Disney World, smiling. I was 10, standing between Mom and Dad. I remembered that trip. I remembered Dad losing his wallet and me offering up my game console savings to help cover the hotel. They called me a hero, but looking back, I wasn't a hero, I was a solution. Every picture after that, Christmases, birthdays, graduations, was marked by a memory of giving something up, of being told, this is what family does, and believing it. I closed the album and cried, not for what had happened, but for the boy in those pictures, the one who thought that if he just gave enough, they'd love him back. The next few days were unbearable. Everyone acted normally, that sterile, too perfect kind of normal that drives you mad. Mom hummed as she made pancakes. Marcus joked about borrowing my charger. Dad asked if I'd help him clean out the shed, like nothing had happened, like I hadn't almost drowned, like I hadn't spent the past 3 nights staring at my ceiling, wondering when they'd ask for something next. That moment came on a Thursday night. I was coming downstairs for water when I heard them in the living room, Mom and Dad, voices low but sharp. "He hasn't spoken to us in days," Mom said. "He's sulking. It's childish." "He'll get over it," Dad muttered behind a rustling newspaper. "He always does." "We can't afford for him to get over it," Mom snapped. "Marcus needs the down payment for that MBA program. $50,000, 0 cents. Did you forget?" My heart stopped. "We can't just take it," Dad said. "He's not stupid." There was a pause. "I talked to Carol," Mom whispered. "Her husband's business is having a fake crisis. What if we say we need James to co-sign a loan to help them? We say it's for the family, responsibility, survival. And then?" Dad asked. "We get the money and give it to Marcus. He'll be in school by then. What's James gonna do, report us?" I stumbled back up the stairs before I could hear the rest. I didn't need to. I had heard enough. This wasn't passive neglect anymore. It wasn't just favoritism. It was a plot, a setup, a con. They weren't going to ask for help. They were going to stage a crisis, manipulate me into bailing them out, then hand the check to Marcus while I carried the debt. And they'd sleep soundly after. They always did. But this time, they wouldn't get the chance. Something inside me cracked. Not like glass, but like ice, under pressure, and the flood that came with it wasn't fair. It was clarity. They had mistaken my silence for obedience. And they were about to find out the hard way what happened when the quiet ones started speaking. The moment the door clicked shut behind me, the house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a stage, and I'd just been cast in a tragedy I didn't ask to audition for. I slid down the wood frame, my spine against the door, and sat on the floor, like a man realizing for the first time that the fire hadn't just singed him, it had been burning around him for years. It's one thing to be overlooked, it's another to be used. But being plotted against, being strategized over like a pawn on a family chessboard, that changes something in you. That's when I knew I couldn't stay. Not just in that house, but in the role they'd written for me. The responsible one, the bank, the fool. The next morning, I met Jessica for coffee. We'd been dating for a year. She was bright, articulate, the kind of woman who could quote Nietzsche and find matching throw pillows in the same breath. I laid it all out, every betrayal, every dime stolen under the banner of family, the conversation I'd overheard from the shadows. I expected rage, loyalty, maybe even a plan. Instead, she stirred her latte like she was mixing paint and said, "Wow, that's a lot, James, a lot. They're planning to defraud me, Jess." She didn't look up. "Well, maybe not defraud. Maybe they're just desperate. It's just a signature, right? For family. You don't want to be the one who breaks up your family over money, do you? Think about what people would say. There it was, not what was right, not what was true, what people would say. I stared at her, watching the person I thought was my teammate turn into just another audience member in my family's charade. She didn't see my pain, she saw my net worth, the comfort I gave her, the safety, the dinners and weekend getaways. My inheritance wasn't a curse to her, it was a feature. I have to go, I said, standing so fast the table wobbled. That night, I called Michael, my best friend since finger paints and bike crashes. I told him everything, the lake, the loan scheme, Jessica. The silence on the other end wasn't hesitation, it was calculation. I know a lawyer, he said. My aunt used her during the worst divorce I've ever seen. She doesn't flinch. Named Sarah Blackwood. He sent her number. I stared at it like it might combust. My thumb hovered, then pressed. Sarah's office sat downtown like a fortress wrapped in brushed steel and frosted glass. Her handshape was firm, her eyes were sharper than any courtroom knife, but kind, like she'd seen boys like me before. Boys who grew up trying to earn their way into the hearts of people who only saw them as useful. She let me talk, no interruptions, just the occasional scribble of her pen. When I finally finished, my throat felt like it had been dragged across gravel. She closed her notebook. James, she said, voice steady as stone. First of all, what your family is doing isn't just manipulation, it's exploitation. You have no legal obligation to pay for your brother's education, none. And the emotional guilt they're using, that's manufactured. They've weaponized your decency. It was the first time someone had said it out loud. They're using you. And not as a casual observation, as a legal truth. The plan you overheard? That's conspiracy to commit fraud, she added. If you sign under pretenses, you're the one on the hook, and they know it. For over an hour we talked, not about feelings, but about strategy, options, structures, trusts, boundaries. She was helping me build a legal fortress where my emotional walls had already crumbled. I walked out feeling lighter, but not because the pain was gone. It was still there, but now it was accompanied by something new. Control. They thought they'd pushed me into the lake and left me gasping. What they didn't realize was, I'd learned how to swim. And now, I was building a dam. The next 2 weeks were theater. I smiled at breakfast. I helped Marcus rearrange the garage. I played the same old part with a brand new script. But inside, I was mapping escape routes, planning exits. We tested the waters first. One night at dinner, I sighed and said, tough day. That tech stock I invested in took a dive. I lost a chunk of savings. You'd think a family might react with concern? Not mine. Mom's fork hit her plate like a cymbal. How much? A lot, I said. I'll need to tighten things up for a while. Marcus's face clouded over. What about my MBA? I shrugged. I'm sorry I can't help right now. What do you mean you can't? My mother snapped. Your grandfather didn't leave you that money to throw away on Wall Street. The irony nearly choked me. That was the final proof I needed. Their love came with a ledger. The next morning I met Sarah again. We crafted something beautiful. The Wilson Scholarship Foundation. $50,000, originally earmarked by me for Marcus's future, was now being legally routed into a nonprofit fund for underprivileged students. The foundation bore my family's name, but the impact? That would belong to strangers more deserving. While Sarah worked her magic, I prepared my quiet exodus. I submitted my portfolio to agencies in a city 3 states away. 1 Zoom interview, 1 offer, 1 yes. I signed the lease on a modest apartment. I opened a new bank account. I began packing, bit by bit, under the cover of night. My life in boxes, buried behind sweaters and cardboard lids. My grandfather's tools, my design books, old photos of Michael and me, the things that mattered. I wasn't just running, I was reclaiming. I wasn't just leaving, I was arriving. And they'd never see it coming. Some climaxes arrive like thunderstorms, violent, loud, impossible to ignore. Mine came wrapped in polite roast chicken and rosemary potatoes. I had overheard my mother 2 days earlier, her voice tight with panic through the thin kitchen walls. I don't know what to tell you, Carol. You'll get your money. I need more time. Robert's deal fell through. We were counting on, her voice cracked. Just give me until the end of the year. So that was it. Carol, my aunt, the one who always smelled like lavender and gave me books for Christmas, wasn't a doting relative. She was a creditor, another hand around my parents' necks, or more accurately, around mine. They weren't just greedy, they were drowning, and they were planning to use me as the lifeline. The final performance came on a Thursday. My mother called it a family meeting, but her voice had that bright, artificial sweetness, the kind people use when trying to disguise the smell of rot. She cooked my favorite meal. She even brought out the good china, as if porcelain could patch over betrayal. We sat around the table, the air thick with tension disguised as domestic comfort. The candles flickered, the chicken was steamed. Marcus leaned back in his chair like a prince surveying his court. My father cleared his throat. My mother folded her hands like she was praying. "James," she began, her voice carefully quivering, "we need to talk, as a family." I nodded, offering no expression. I already knew my lines. I'd been rehearsing for weeks. "We've hit a rough patch," she continued, and, like a practiced actress, let a tear roll down her cheek. "The business is struggling. We're at risk of losing everything." My father picked up where she left off. "It's serious, son, and we wouldn't come to you unless we had no other option." Then came the sheaf of papers, slid across the table like a poisoned offering. A loan agreement. They wanted me to co-sign, a guarantor with my entire investment portfolio on the line. "It's just a signature," my mother said softly, "to save your family." Then Marcus chimed in, the grin already forming. "Time to step up, little bro. Be a man." I looked at the papers, then at them, the tears, the pleading, the arrogance. But I felt nothing. No fire, no sadness, just a kind of cold, clean clarity. The kind that comes after a storm flattens everything in its path, and you're left with silence and sky. I picked up the pen they'd placed beside the contract. I held it long enough to watch the flicker of hope spark in their eyes. Then I put it down. "No," I said. The silence hit like a slap. "What?" my mother gasped. "No." This time I looked each of them in the eye. "I won't be signing anything." I stood up. My father's mouth opened, but no sound came. My mother looked stunned, like someone had smacked the air from her lungs. Marcus scoffed, like he thought I was bluffing. But I wasn't. I walked out of the dining room, grabbed the 2 duffel bags I'd packed 3 nights earlier, stepped into the hallway and opened the front door. No yelling, no monologue, just the click of the latch as it shut behind me. And that was the night I left the house, not as the good son, the fallback, the financial plan, but as someone finally free. 3 days passed, the silence from them was deafening, no texts, no calls. But then came the real showstopper. Marcus, ever the golden boy, marched into our local bank like he owned it, probably with that same smug grin he'd worn his whole life. He walked up to the private banking desk, gave his name, and told them he was there to transfer funds for his MBA. The advisor, a woman in her 50s with years of experience and very little patience, typed something, frowned, then typed again. "I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson," she said. "There's no transfer scheduled. The account has been closed." "What do you mean, closed?" I imagined him snapping. "I mean," she replied calmly, "that the account was legally transferred out 2 days ago." His voice must have cracked with rage. "That's my money." "I'm afraid it's not," she would have said, her tone neutral. "The account belonged to James Wilson. The transfer was legal and final." And that's when the second act began. The very next morning, a cream-colored envelope arrived at my parents' house, thick, elegant, with embossed lettering, addressed to Mr. Marcus Wilson. He must have torn it open like it was a mistake to fix, but it wasn't a mistake. Inside was a letter. "Dear Mr. Wilson, on behalf of our board of directors, we are thrilled to inform you that you have been named the honorary inspiration for the newly founded Wilson Scholarship Foundation. A generous anonymous donor has contributed $50,000, 0 cents, in your family's name to assist students who, like yourself, have demonstrated ambition and overcome great personal challenges. Your story has inspired our benefactor to support young people pursuing education through their hard work and determination." That was the moment the mask cracked. I wasn't there to see it, but I can picture it. The slow draining of color from Marcus's face. My mother snatched the letter from his hands, her lips trembling. My father slumped into a chair like all the air had left his body. Because the money wasn't just gone. It had become a monument, a charitable foundation carved from the same marble they tried to bury me under. A permanent reminder, not just of their failure, but of the one person they never imagined would say no. Me. And while they stared at a letter wrapped in poetic irony, I was already 3 states away, unpacking boxes in a quiet apartment above a bakery. No more roles, no more stage. Just me, James Wilson, finally, the writer of his own story. The fallout was as swift as it was predictable. The first voicemail came from my mother, her voice dripping with manufactured sorrow. "James, honey, what have you done? There's been a terrible mistake. You need to call us. We're so worried. This isn't like you." I didn't need to hear the rest. Next was Marcus. His rage practically burned through the screen. A string of expletives, misspelled accusations, and the classic punchline, "You ruined my life." Then came my father, cold, terse, impersonal. "Call your mother. You've upset her terribly." I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I opened my contacts list, my hands calm, and one by one, I blocked them all. Mother, father, brother. The act felt less like cutting ties, and more like loosening a noose I hadn't realized had been there my whole life. And then, there was silence. Beautiful, sacred silence. A few days later, my phone rang again, an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Aunt Carol. Her voice was honey-coated, but her intentions were old and sour. "James, sweetie, it's your auntie. Your mom is beside herself with worry. Just come home and talk it out. Whatever's wrong, we'll fix it." But I wasn't falling for it, not this time. "I'm fine, Aunt Carol," I said, steady and clear. "There's nothing to fix, but your family." They stopped being my family a long time ago. I hung up before she could reply and blocked her too. Then, like clockwork, the last gasp of desperation arrived. A knock on my apartment door one evening. 2 officers. "We received a call," one said, kindly but professionally. "Your family reported you as a possible missing person." I almost laughed. "I'm 22, I moved here for work. I'm not missing, I'm just not theirs anymore." I showed them my ID, my lease, and my employee badge. They left understanding, maybe even a little impressed. And with that, every bridge they'd tried to burn behind me was officially ash. Their power, emotional, legal, and familial, was gone. 6 months passed in quiet healing. The city felt big, but kind. At my new job, I was just James, the guy who liked clean lines, bold fonts, and black coffee. My coworkers didn't know about my family's betrayals. They just knew I had a dry sense of humor and always brought the best bagels on Fridays. I saw a therapist. I unpacked decades of guilt, of being the good son, of wondering why love always seemed so transactional. I stretched the pain out like a pulled muscle until it loosened its grip. I started to feel whole again. Then one afternoon, an email arrived. From Lily. Marcus's cousin, 16, quiet, always watching. She'd been at the lake that day. "Hi, James. I know Mom said we shouldn't contact you, but I had to. I saw what Marcus did that day. I saw you struggling, and I didn't say anything. I was scared. I'm sorry. Things are a mess. Marcus lost his spot in the MBA program. He's working at a call center. He's angry all the time. Uncle Robert and Aunt Susan are falling apart. I overheard Mom fighting with Aunt Susan. They didn't just want your money for school. Your parents owe Mom a huge loan. They were about to get sued. That's why they were so desperate. I don't think it excuses anything, but I thought you should know. I'm glad you got out." Sat with the email for a long time. It didn't spark pity, just understanding. It wasn't about Marcus. It wasn't even about me. It was about survival. Desperation cloaked in guilt. The family folded into debt and betrayal. They weren't just greedy, they were cornered animals, and I was the nearest exit. I replied simply, "Thank you for telling me. I'm doing okay. I hope you are too." And with that, I closed the door. A year passed. My apartment now feels like home. The skyline outside my window doesn't scare me anymore, it excites me. My shoulder hardly aches, except on rainy days. I still see my therapist. I still drink too much coffee, and I've learned how to say no without guilt. Last week, a letter arrived, not from a family member, not from a lawyer, just a plain envelope from the community college. Inside was a handwritten note. "Dear Wilson Foundation. I'm a single mom, I work 2 jobs, I was barely making it through nursing school, but your scholarship gave me a chance. I can afford textbooks, I can spend time with my son, I can breathe. I don't know who the anonymous donor is, but please, if you can, tell them this." They didn't just give me money, they gave me hope. I held that letter like it was a living thing. That $50,000, 0 cents my family saw as theirs, it became someone else's fresh start. My greatest rebellion had become someone else's foundation. I didn't just walk away from them. I built something in their absence, something real. And in that quiet moment by the window, sunlight spilling across my desk, I realized what freedom truly is. It's not an escape, it's not revenge. It's the peace that comes when you no longer have to explain who you are to people who never tried to understand. It's the power to begin again, and this time on your terms. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt like the black sheep, the invisible backbone, or just the one expected to carry the weight without thanks, I want you to know you're not alone. We tell these stories not just to entertain but to remind people that healing is possible and that walking away from toxic people, even family, can sometimes be the bravest thing you'll ever do. If this video moved you, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. We share real, powerful stories just like this every week. Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect your peace? Let's talk about it. And if you haven't yet, check out our other videos for more family drama, real-life justice, and the kind of storytelling that sticks with you long after the credits roll. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the family you choose is the one that sets you free.